Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred On podcast. Tomorrow night at home, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, one of the biggest games of the season for our club. West Ham come to town. Now usually, I wouldn't say that West Ham are one of the most important rivals of ours. It feels to me more like we are one of West Ham's biggest rivals, rather than the other way around. But the way that has kind of manifested itself over the last decade or so particularly, I personally think it probably, as well as kind of the old days of the firms really hating each other, and that's probably where it really started from. I think kind of 10, 15 years ago when Spurs started cherry-picking their best players, Michael Carrick, Jermaine Defoe, Freddie Canute et al., that's when it really started to rankle with the West Ham fans about Spurs. And I remember certainly when I used to be a steward at White Hart Lane, there was one League Cup game in the week when West Ham came to town and they busted up Tottenham High Road, and then I was sat as a steward in between the West Ham fans and the home fans, and a coin came across me as the West Ham fans were throwing coins at Spurs fans. So it's certainly become a more heated rivalry over the years, and it's definitely one where we love to get one over on them. So that is tomorrow night, and this is my match preview. As ever, guys, please do keep supporting the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Please do go over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and give me a follow or a subscribe. That would be really helpful, and vice versa. If you are listening on a podcast platform, please do come over to YouTube and drop a subscribe and press that bell button as well so you get daily notifications when I am releasing this content. So, West Ham currently 9th in the table. They've won 6, drawn 3 and lost 5 of the games. We are 5th in the table after getting that point at Man City, having won 8, drawn 3 and lost 3. I think overall, wouldn't we say, when Big Ange came in and he talked about how there would be bumps in the road, and I think a lot of us were discussing and listening to people on podcasts, Spurs fans, talking about how maybe around Christmas we'd be down in kind of 10th or 11th place, but it would be around then that Ange would get his philosophy into the players and start getting buy-in. I think we are still well ahead of the game in terms of that stuff. It's been a very exciting start. Of course, we haven't won in 4. We need to put that right, and hopefully tomorrow night will be the night that we do so. But I am excited about where Tottenham Hotspur are, the style of play we are using, especially how well we're doing considering all of the injuries and the suspensions that we've had to deal with. Let's talk a bit more about West Ham. Their away form this season, I wouldn't say has been great, but they did win their last game away at Burnley 2-1, but they were 1-0 down until the 90th minute and turned it around. And we know that Burnley are, a team who play nice football. They had the better of that game, and West Ham kind of sat in, defended, and then hit them with the sucker punches at the end. I really feel like the bigger clubs with the bigger squads are really super benefiting from the extra added time that teams are now getting at the end of each half. And West Ham really turned them over there. They lost 3-2 away at Brentford. They lost against Villa 4-1 and Liverpool 3-1. So I'd say, especially with Villa, kind of a similar away game for West Ham to come to Spurs. And I think if Spurs can get on them early and kind of play that first 20-minute game that we've been playing in our recent games against Villa and against Chelsea, if we can be more clinical in that kind of starting 25, half an hour, then we could blow them away. That's what I'm saying. They also went to Luton. They won 2-1, didn't blow them away, but they did win 3-1 at Brighton, and that's another similar game where Brighton had all of the ball, but West Ham really hit them with sucker punches and got a great win there down in Falmer. So that's pretty impressive. And on the opening day, they drew 1-1 away at Bournemouth. So not great away form overall, which bodes well, but also they have had some scalps in there. That Brighton one, like I said, particularly one to maybe look at and say, that's what David Moyes will be trying to get them to do tomorrow night. Kind of play deep, soak up our possession, soak up our kind of chances, don't let us get in behind, and then try and be clinical on the break. The danger men for West Ham. First, I'm going to talk about kind of historical danger men, the players who I think always score against us. And I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like going into the Premier League games, there's always scripts that feel like they've been pre-written. Players who always score against us and then will score again. And I'm like, if I was still betting, and I'm not, but if you're betting people, then these are where I would be putting my money. Tomas Soucek always scores against us. Mihail Antonio seems to get his best performances held for the Spurs games. And tomorrow night, of course, I think he'll be up against Ben Davies, potentially Emerson Royal, because Romero will come straight back in. But I think Big Ange will stick with Ben Davies on the left of the two centre-backs And Mihail Antonio, I predict, will try and hang on Ben Davies and bully him in terms of his hold-up play, his back-to-goal stuff where he's laying in other people and then going on for the run to try and get on the end of crosses. And of course, Antonio and Soucek, huge threats from set pieces. I'll go into that some more. Jared Bowen has scored a lot of goals away over the last season and in going into this season as well. He's got pace and is a great talent. He's always a threat. And then in terms of pulling the strings, Lucas Paqueta, really excellent player, really rated. Man City were in for him in the summer, and you can see why. Mentioned set pieces. They added James Ward-Prowse to their side this season and have scored already a lot of goals from corners and set pieces. As I mentioned earlier this week, Spurs actually haven't officially conceded many goals, if any, from corners this season, but I always feel nervous when we're defending set pieces. We've conceded in our last 2 games from deep free kicks whipped into our box, and we need to get a hold of that. Hopefully having Romero back in the side will mean that he can take charge of that and get his head on first balls. But we need to be strong in those situations tomorrow night because Ward-Prowse is an incredible deliverer of a football. In fact, if I was Big Ange this week, I'd be saying, whatever you do not be naive and give away free kicks anywhere in our own half. It's easier said than done, but Ward-Prowse really is a magician when it comes to things like that. I also want to say Kudus, who is their signing, who plays off the right-hand side going forward. He looks a threat too. He scored some amazing goals, particularly, I think, a left-footed kind of overhead scissor kick against Brentford that was very impressive, and he seems to be settling in for West Ham well. So, like I said, they will play a kind of style of Conte ball. David Moyes will keep them tight and narrow, and they will look to hit us on the break and try and score and be dangerous from set pieces. We may well have to be patient, particularly if we do not get a goal or two in that first 25 minutes. It could become a bit of a war, but be patient, play our football, really pull them apart. I don't think they're that as energetic as us. I don't think they've got the legs we've got. I don't think they've got the pace that we've got. Not something I've said a lot, but I think we've brought more pace into this side. So if we can kind of move them around a lot, as Ange will want us to do, be brave on the ball, I think we can pull them apart. And as ever with Spurs games, I do think there'll be goals. I would look at this being maybe 3-2, possibly even another goal in it as well. 3-2 or 4-2 is what I'm going for. They are, West Ham, I've seen a bit, susceptible to conceding from crosses a bit themselves. Brentford scored a couple of goals from crosses. Villa got to the byline and cut some balls back. So I'm wondering if potentially things aren't going well towards the back end of the second half, will Richarlison come on and we'll try and get some more crosses in from Johnson's side? Obviously, Kulusevski scored the equaliser against City from a cross, and it is something that we might be able to use going into the back end of the game if needed. As well as that, they really suffer from teams, if they do get to the byline, then cutting balls back. That's something I think we need to be better at. Get to the byline, Brennan Johnson to the byline, and then cut the ball back, maybe towards the edge of the box rather than across the front of the 6-yard box. Although obviously Sonny has scored goals from that kind of 6-yard box position too. But if we can cut the ball back and then get our midfielders running onto the ball and trying to finish from there, that could be something we can benefit from as well. In terms of previous results against West Ham last season, we won 2-0 at home when Christian Stellini was on the touchline. That was that amazing Emerson Royale goal where him and Ben Davies ran the length of the pitch. Davies put Royale in and he nonchalantly stroked it home into the bottom left-hand corner, something we didn't think he had in him, but it really was good. And the second goal was Sonny put through by Harry Kane and stroking it home. And then back in September, the beginning of last season, we drew 1-1 at London Stadium. We went ahead from a breakaway goal, a classic kind of Conte transition goal that Kane finished, and then Tomas Soucek disappointingly equalised, breaking through from midfield with some kind of lackadaisical defending from us, I would say. But that, like I said, Tomas Soucek again scoring for West Ham against us. The team that I think we will pick tomorrow: Vicario, Pedro Porro, Destiny Udogie. Christian Romero comes back in. I think he'll come back in for Royale. The only thing that makes me wonder about that is Big Ange might be tempted to keep Royale in to use against the strength of Antonio if he feels confident that Antonio will start for West Ham, but I think he'd rather concentrate on our game and therefore keep Davis in for the balance of having a left footer as that left-sided centre-back. So I think Davis will keep his place. Then I think Pierre-Emile Højbjerg did enough when he came on against City to keep his place, and he'll start in the 6. and then Basuma will kind of push one forward into one of the 8, alongside Giovanni Lo Celso, who played so well against Man City too. Kulusevski, I think, will move back to the right up front, with Brennan Johnson on the left and Heung-min Son starting at centre forward. Guys, let me know what you think the team will be in the comments below, and feel free to tell me what you think the result will be as well. I said earlier, I think it could be 3-2 Spurs, maybe 4-2 Spurs. I feel like if we can be as good as we have done recently in terms of our standard of play and be more clinical, then we can take the 3 points and go into that Newcastle game at the weekend back on the winning trail and maybe try and even pick up 6 from 6. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do subscribe or follow if you're listening on the podcast, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and come over to YouTube, youtube.com/@BarnabySlater_, and give me a subscribe there. Thank you guys, goodbye, and come on you Spurs.